Thanks for joining us on another busy night of all things people, power, and politics. This is The Pulse. I'm Roop Raj. We always say you never know what's real and what's not on social media. And a viral video over the weekend had so many asking that question from the White House. We're talking with the cyber risk expert, David Derajotis, about how you can make sure that what you retweet is real. We're also talking with Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan in Studio C about his run for governor, how he'd respond if President Trump wanted to move the National Guard into the Motor City, and a bold proposal for lawmakers who don't get the budget done on time. Mayor Duggan's thoughts coming up. And President Trump considering declaring a housing emergency. The problem? High prices and low supply. We're talking with the president of RE/MAX of Southeast Michigan about what this could mean. But we begin tonight on Capitol Hill, where this man was grilled once again by lawmakers. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. appearing in front of a Senate committee today, trying to defend his efforts to pull back COVID vaccine recommendations and issues at federal health agencies. He said the CDC director, who was fired last week after a month on the job, was untrustworthy. Kennedy also disputed reports people are having issues getting the COVID shots and was pressed on his stance about who can actually or should get the shot. You'll remember the latest version is only approved for those 65 and older and younger people with underlying health conditions.
Who promised that you would not take away vaccines from anyone who wanted them. You just changed the classification of the COVID vaccine.
I'm not taking them away from people, Senator.
It takes it away if you can't get it from your pharmacist.
I would say effectively we're denying people vaccine.
Senator Cantwell.
You're wrong.
Now, Kennedy fired a panel of experts who had advised, I should say, the government on vaccine policy in June, replacing them with a group that includes several vaccine skeptics. Kennedy has pushed theories about vaccines that scientists have debunked. That's just scratching the surface, so let's pick up the pace and run through some of the other big stories we're following right now. Former President Biden recently had surgery to remove skin cancer lesions on his forehead. A spokesperson confirmed the surgery today. You'll remember the president was diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer that spread to his bones back in March. He also had a lesion removed from his chest while in office. From the former president to the current one, President Trump wants the Supreme Court to rule quickly on his tariffs. A lower court ruling found most of them are in illegal use of emergency power law, but left them in place. The Trump administration says the U.S. would be on, quote, the brink of economic catastrophe without those taxes. The Solicitor General wants the court to decide within a week whether to hear the case and hold arguments. They hope that would happen in the first week of November. And the Justice Department is looking into mortgage fraud allegations against this woman, Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. She's challenging the Trump administration's efforts to fire her, saying it's designed to erode the Fed's independence. The president announced he was firing her last month after one of his appointees made the allegations against her. A Justice Department spokesperson declined to comment. And did you see this video over the weekend? The White House windows open and workers tossing items out of the window one by one. The president claimed it was artificial intelligence, despite his press team telling the media it's legit just a few hours before. The White House added it was a contractor doing regular maintenance while the president was gone. But this all raises a much bigger question about artificial intelligence. Deep fakes are getting tougher to spot, as you probably know, and it's making a lot of people question more than just that. Joining us now, David Derajotis, cyber risk expert. David, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us here tonight on The Pulse.
Thank you, Roop.
So, the president is asked by Fox's Peter Doocy, hey, that video, what do you make of it? The president says these are 600-pound windows, they're hard to open. It had to have been AI, but the press team said differently. How do you go about trying to begin to decipher what's real and what's not?
Rube, things are so much easier when technology is not involved. Why can't we just go back to simple times like this Justin Bieber lookalike that went into the club a couple of weeks ago, ran up a $10,000 tab allegedly. You know, he was a lookalike. With technology, so much can be accomplished, so much can be done, but we're entering an era where it's going to be nearly impossible with the naked eye to determine what is real, what is not.
You and I sat on this set more than a year ago and talked a little bit about artificial intelligence, and we were laughing because there was a fake pizza ad that was all produced on artificial intelligence. And it was very clear because the person had 6 fingers, the face was blurry, the emotions didn't match the words. In a year and 3 months, it has refined to the point where we don't know what's real.
Yeah, I mean, there are countless companies right now that we have not heard about that are developing a better, faster, cheaper, more impressive way to deploy AI. And that's against these large multi-billion-dollar companies, Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, that continue to invest incredible amounts of money. The rate of advancement that all of these technology companies are making has been unprecedented. Just last week, a couple weeks ago, Google introduced their new model where they create brand new images, a couple keystrokes, a click, and you have an image that you can't even tell the difference whether it's real or not.
You know, you pull the curtain back and you have to ask the question as a journalist, you know, who's paying for what? When you look at lawmakers in Washington, how many of their campaigns were funded by big tech? How much does big tech have an influence in Washington with the president, with lawmakers? And the regulations that people want in place, they aren't happening so far. At least I'm not aware of them. Where's your hand on the pulse of regulations with AI?
Yeah, Roop, it's taken a lot of time. I mean, Michigan just passed a deepfake act last week that has to do with non-consensual explicit images.
That's a state legislation,
It's
right?
a state legislation, and we're seeing that pop up across the country. It's much like the Data Breach Notification Act that went into play many years ago when California started it. It's all a patchwork of state laws. We did get a federal Take It Down Act that the president signed into play really a couple of months ago, again, but it focuses on more explicit, non-consensual pornographic images.
But when you have, and something like that was just passed by Governor Whitmer a few days ago, but when you have something different, when you have, for instance, not knowing whether or not something was actually tossed out of a White House window, not knowing if David Derajotis was at an event or not, that's when things become murky and dangerous. Talk about what it is that we should be concerned about.
Yeah, consumers really, the burden's going to be on all of us as individuals. As we scroll through all of these different social media platforms, we look at videos and we consume it at an incredible rate. We need to slow down. I know I've said that multiple times before. The state laws that we have across the country, like I said, it is a patchwork, and they deal with different things: name, image, likeness, transparency, risk management around how the models are developed, how the algorithms are being used to either approve or deny credit, approve or deny healthcare, some things like that. But as it relates to images, as it relates to videos, really, it's very difficult, and I think this will be the last year that we will be able to use our own eyes to see imperfections in those images. So it's a matter of looking at, can you find that image or video somewhere else? Do you see any minor flaws, shadows, maybe unnatural blinking, things of that nature? That's about what's left.
And so when we talk about them finally closing the gap on that, it's going to be literally impossible to tell the difference between what's real and what's not. What can people at home do in terms of contacting their lawmakers? Yes, here at home, but I think in Washington, where we know big tech spends a lot of time.
Yeah, I think we should make sure that they know that this is important to us, the safety of our children, the safety of all of our family members, the people that we love and have in our lives, to not overly depend on AI, to have the right safeguards in place. Roop, we just heard recently, unfortunately, that a 16-year-old in California took his life because he was relying and confiding in OpenAI's chatbot. So we need to get better regulation around that. We need to have good safeguards in place because these are important. It's not just a matter of losing money, which is critical, but now we're talking about losing lives.
No, and I think that case that you're talking about was so tragic because instead of seeing a therapist that could have actually kind of seen signs, this chat AI thing was actually showing him ways to do harm to himself. And that's just, I mean, it's unconscionable what could be permitted. And because of that, that young man lost his life.
Yeah, it all started with him using it as a very functional educational tool, being able to use it for homework. But what ended up happening is it progressed, and the number of chats that he was having about anxiety, depression, and like you said, kind of guiding through the process of different ways to maybe take your own life or help draft a suicide letter. It got way off the track, and help should have been provided or caught partway through or right at the beginning.
Do you believe that regulation is the key from a federal level to, I guess, if you can try, put the toothpaste back in the tube?
Roop, it's important. Regulation is important, but we can't leave it up to the government. We can't leave it up to the federal or state government. We have to be involved in the people that we love, their lives, our friends, our coworkers, whatever help, assistance, guidance, and education that can be provided. That's so important because it still comes down to people.
The final question, how will this affect the legal system? If a court says this video is admissible and it shows someone allegedly doing something that they didn't do, how will it become incumbent on big tech to figure that out?
Yeah, we could see criminal as well as civil penalties. And we see that now with a lot of the state laws that are in place, with some of the federal regulation that's come down. Individuals can face jail time. Companies can certainly be fined incredible amounts of money, so they can get hit on both sides. It's important.
All right, you're a cyber risk expert and you're a regular on the Pulse. And David Derajotis, we always enjoy having you. Thanks for joining us here tonight.
Thank you.
Well, he's making an independent bid for governor, and he has some big ideas for the state. What Mayor Mike Duggan says should happen to lawmakers if they don't pass the budget on time. You're watching The Pulse on Fox 2. Back down The Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics. Here now to talk about his independent run for governor, Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan. And Mayor, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us here tonight.
Thanks for having me back, Roop.
All right, let's talk about some of the news of the day, news of the week. I wanted to kind of pose something to you. If you're the governor of the state of Michigan, and the president calls and says your crime issue in some of your big cities are over the top, we need to help you, what do you tell him?
So I'll tell him what I did tell the new U.S. Attorney Jerome Gorgon when the president appointed him in May, which is the year before I got elected, we had 750 carjackings in the city of Detroit. We added 350 cops. We built real-time crime centers. We put out the green lights. And this year, we're not going to have 750. We're going to have 75, a 90% reduction. Last year, the fewest homicides since 1965. But when the new U.S. attorney for the Trump administration came in May, he said, what do you need? And I said, we have these groups of teenagers in these beefs like we've never seen. U.S. Attorney Gorgon got several more prosecutors from the Justice Department, got us help from ATF and DEA. We just had a raid 2 weeks ago where we hit 11 houses of suspected gang members, got 43 illegal weapons out, and we're seeing things quiet down. So what we have today is an effective partnership with the Trump Justice Department because we talk with each other.
You came under criticism by many Democrats out there who thought that you were praising President Trump for the help that he provided for the city of Detroit.
You know, I'm just going to tell the truth. And I was the prosecutor in 2000 trying to get the feds to focus on gun violence in Detroit. I've been the mayor, and we've had some level of help. But since U.S. Attorney Gorgon's been there in May, there are more federal prosecutors working gun cases, working grand juries to bust up these gangs, and ATF and DEA supporting the Wayne County prosecutor on these raids than we've ever had. And I will predict that we will finish 2025 with new record lows on homicides and shootings because of that partnership.
Look, Detroit's not even on the list or isn't being mentioned by President Trump at all. New Orleans has, Baltimore is, Chicago is, and that is because of the numbers that you're talking about. However, when you and if you decide that you're in a position to talk to the president as the mayor or the governor, and he decides to try to send National Guard troops in because the crime goes out of control again, what do you do? What do you tell the president?
So again, I'm having these conversations with the U.S. attorney, but the great majority of our homicides are people who know each other. There are two groups that are beefing. There are drug deals gone bad. So think about this. We had the terrible shooting on the playground when the little boy was killed. Two groups beefing with each other. One guy sees a rival on a bus, snatches his mask. That guy goes back, gets other people to shoot in a park. How does a National Guardsman with a rifle begin to predict where these beefs arise? What we need is what the U.S. attorney is doing now with grand juries to bust these groups up in the first place. And I'll make exactly the same cases I've made, and I believe the U.S. attorney is making. What we are doing is working. This is serious law enforcement efforts that are being done really well between the federal government and the city of Detroit.
But the National Guard wouldn't be able to help in anything of these efforts that you're talking about, right?
How does the National Guard know where the beef is coming between two groups in a neighborhood? And if they see a National Guard troop at the park, then they hit the house later on that night. This is why we have a serious law enforcement official in Jerome Gorgon in the U.S. Attorney's Office who's running a serious strategy.
There's a serious problem in Lansing right now. You have an impasse in Lansing that is being talked about across the country. There are fewer bills passed this past legislative session than we've seen in recent years. What would you do as governor to try to get the two sides to sit down if you're an independent in that office?
So I am going to start with the bill that I'm pushing, and we're going to get this passed. The state law says the legislature has to adopt the budget by July 1st. Now, the law says City of Detroit has to adopt by April 12th. 12 years in a row, the city council and I passed it by April 12th without drama. At the state, these kids are back in classes where they don't know how many teachers they can hire. They don't know if hot lunches are going to be available after October. And so I proposed a lawmaker accountability bill. If you haven't adopted the budget, legislature has 1 million job a year, adopt the budget. If you haven't adopted the budget by July 1st, you stop getting paid until you do. You don't do your job, you don't get paid. And there's real interest on both Republicans and Democrats for that bill. Once you do that, I guarantee you the one thing these two parties are united on is they want their paychecks.
Do you believe Governor Whitmer could be doing more to get these two sides to sit down?
The problem is, and it'd been a lot easier for me to get elected as a Democrat. But I'd have been in exactly the same situation that Gretchen Whitmer's in. All the Republicans are against you because you tried to knock them off in their rep and Senate seats. Of course, the far left wing of the Democratic Party doesn't support her any more than they support me. And so if you run as a partisan governor, you're in partisan gridlock, you're part of the problem. I'm convinced when I run as an independent, I'm not going to get involved in these state rep and I don't care if it's a Republican Senate or a House, Democratic House. I'm going to get folks to work together.
We only have a few minutes left. The budget bill that the president's proposed has so much about, as you know, Medicare, SNAP benefits being cut. People say the states will have to pick up where there's a backfill. Is the state of Michigan prepared to do something like that if needed?
Yeah, so right now we're reviewing it at the city of Detroit because some of the provisions on the accelerated tax breaks could affect the city's corporate income tax revenues, and we're looking right now on how to address it, and we'll have something next week. But you have to face reality and deal with it, and I think you'll see next week in the city of Detroit, we will handle it appropriately and guarantee that we have yet another balanced budget.
There hasn't been an independent who's won the kind of race that you're up against right now. Why do you think you're the man who can do it?
Yeah, I sat in this studio, not necessarily with you, in 2013 where they said a white guy hasn't run for mayor of Detroit in 40 years and no write-in has ever been elected. What makes you think you could do it? But people in this state want change. They're fed up with the parties. And for everybody who's sick of politics as usual, I'm an alternative.
Mayor Mike Duggan, good to see you here on The Pulse. We appreciate your time. And should we move forward with a debate or something like that, we hope that you'll take part.
Thanks, Roop.
Mayor Mike Duggan, good to see you. President Trump considering declaring a housing emergency. He wants to take on high prices and low inventory. We're talking with an expert about what this means. You're watching The Pulse here on Fox 2. It is People, Power, and Politics. Welcome back to Detroit's only nightly political talk show. Here to talk about President Trump's possible housing emergency declaration. Remax of Southeastern Michigan President Jeanette Schneider. And Jeanette, it's always good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So first of all, we know the president has certain powers under a 1976 act that says, hey, I can say we have a problem here that's big enough to be an emergency. When's the last time someone said there's a housing emergency in America?
I believe that was during 2008, during that Great Recession, as they like to call. That was the last time this has been enacted.
When you have something like that happen, you know there's certain conditions. 2008, we knew how bad things were. There seems to be some uncertainty about whether things are good or bad right now. When it comes to the housing market, give us kind of a non-political, just like as an expert, where are we when it comes to housing? It
is a very interesting market, I guess is a good word to use, because it's not hot, but it's not necessarily cold. It's just kind of in flux. Is maybe a good word for it. For so many years, we've been talking about it being a hot seller's market. Seller, seller, seller. Buyers have been standing in line to see houses, multiple offers, all of that. That's not the market we have today. I think sellers still have an edge, but things are moving more towards a neutral market. They're not fully a buyer's market in our area, but they're kind of moving more towards a neutral market. So it's just kind of a popular saying. It's kind of a market.
Yeah, it's
that's
a meh market. Yeah,
that's kind of how it's
or a
done.
meh market. When you look at that kind of a market, and you have the president saying, "Hey, since 2008, we've had the same ongoing issue, which is a lack of inventory. I think there's something like 4 million homes short right now.
Yep.
What does that mean to everyone who's watching right now? When you have a shortage like that, why would that cause an emergency eventually?
Well, because what that means is there's not enough product to satisfy the demand of all the people that want to live in a home. So we've got a lot of potential buyers, active buyers out there that are looking for a house. The people that are, old enough now to do this on their own. They've gone to college, they got their job, they want to do this. You've got a young family starting, they want to do this. You've got immigrants who've come here, they're looking to buy a home. You've got all of this demand, and over the years we've had a shrinking supply, and to the point that we're now 4 million homes short. Well, what's the basic principle of supply and demand? When you don't have enough of something, prices inevitably go up. And we've seen that. That is a real consequence of it. It's not just I can't find anything. What's out there, I may or may not be able to afford because prices keep going
Because there's
up.
scarcity out there.
Yeah.
And so if you go to try to buy the Xbox off the shelves and there's only 8 left in the whole state, you're going to have a higher price point.
Yes.
This is interesting. But talk about the emergency powers that the federal government can enact. And what would that essentially do to help kind of free things up?
I think it depends on where they go with it. And right now there is a lot of speculation on this, right? And I look at it and I say there's really two kind of roads I see them being able to go down. One of them is going to be to address the supply issue that we're talking about. Now, some things that might be able to be done is they could potentially roll back some of the tariffs that are on some of the construction.
So like
goods
wood and other lumber.
Lumber
right?
is a big one, absolutely. So that would help with some of the cost of new homes, the willingness of maybe builders and developers to develop because they can now do it at a price where they can sell it at. So, I mean, that would be one thing. There's been talk about selling off federal land to developers to develop for housing. That could be something else. There could be some things done as far as the building and zoning codes to kind of standardize them. Right now, there's a lot out there. And I think people have good intentions with energy and, different things that they want to see done in a house. But all of those things tend to add cost to a home.
And that's where politics do play a role because Democrats have generally put more regulations in place when it comes to the environment and how we build things and But does any of that compromise safety and when you take those things away, or is it a matter of, safety with the home and the integrity of the home, or is it more just kind of like, hey, these are general rules that we want to follow in our country?
I think there is a path that you can go down that does not impact safety. Absolutely. I don't think anybody wants to see that.
Right.
But I know even within our state, couple of the Home Builders Association recently filed a lawsuit with the state of Michigan because they're saying, hey, look, the energy things you want us to do are adding $16,000 to the cost of a home, and the return to the consumer isn't there. Now, there's two sides to that story, but so those are some of the things that potentially could be addressed on that side of the coin.
The president essentially saying he may decide to use his emergency powers to declare a housing emergency by this fall. That's literally like a few weeks away.
Exactly.
Do you think it's going to happen sooner than later, or do you believe that perhaps he's going to wait and see how things go?
They're kind of throwing this out there now. I'm certainly no political strategist, right? But you've got the Fed meeting later this month. I also think that this could be a little bit of again another trial balloon thrown out there that he wants Powell to hear. That I'm serious about this. I think politically he's listening to people saying home affordability is an issue, and he's trying to say I get it, I hear you, I'm trying to do something about it. I don't see it happening in September because they also have budget things to get done by the end of September. So I think they've got a lot on their plate. Fall would give him October, November. November is a year away from midterm elections. I think that there's something there that could be going on.
And there are a lot of people who are saying that the midterms, how people feel around that time is an important gauge for how they vote. And so clearly this is a topic we're not done talking about. We just began scraping the surface today. And Jeanette Schneider always giving us kind of an apolitical view on where things stand right now. We always thank you for doing it with such great expertise and grace.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Good to see you, Jeanette. That is the Pulse for tonight. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rup Raj. As always, it was great to be with you.